You've probably seen the clip by now, and if you haven't, buckle up, because this one sent Niner Nation into a frenzy. There's a real question floating around right now. Does Maxx Crosby actually want to be a San Francisco 49er? I'm not talking about random fan fiction or a fake trade graphic. I'm talking about a legitimate moment that has people connecting dots, and if you're a 49ers fan who cares about this defense getting back to dominance, this is the kind of rumor that makes you stop, scrolling, and lean in. Here's where it all starts. Crosby, one of the most relentless pass rushers in football, teases a new song and drops a line about buying a brand new crib in the Bay and touching down in the Bay like Steph and Clay. Immediately, for Niners fans hear that and think, wait a second. What exactly is going on here? You don't just casually reference buying a house in the Bay Area if there isn't at least some smoke behind it. And in the NFL, where there's smoke, there's usually at least a little bit of fire. Now let's layer in the context. Crosby's situation with the Raiders has been anything but smooth lately. He wanted to finish out the season despite dealing with a knee issue. The team decided to shut him down. That didn't sit well with him. Reports surfaced about frustration, tension, questions about direction. And when you're a player in your late 20s who has only played in one playoff game your entire career, you start thinking differently. You start thinking about legacy. You start thinking about competing for a Super Bowl instead of just putting up numbers on a rebuilding team. And that's where this gets interesting for you as a Niners fan. Because if there's one thing this 49ers roster needs right now, it's a legitimate boost to the pass rush. You saw what happened when the pressure wasn't there consistently. You can't ask your secondary to hold up forever in today's NFL. Quarterbacks are too good. Schemes are too advanced. If you don't get home, you get burned. And imagining a scenario where Nick Bosa is coming off one edge and Maxx Crosby is coming off the other. That's the kind of defensive front that changes game plans before the ball is even snapped. But let me ask you something straight up. Do you actually want Maxx Crosby in red and gold? Type YS or nitrogen monoxide in the comments right now. I want to see where you stand. No fence sitting. If that idea fires you up, say yes. If you're skeptical, say nitrogen monoxide and tell me why. I'll be in there reading. Through your takes, there's also the emotional layer to this. Crosby built his identity with the Raiders. He's been loyal, he's been vocal, he even has Raiders ink on his body. So if there's even a hint that he might be open to a move, that tells you something. That tells you the frustration might be real. And when an elite pass rusher starts questioning whether he can win where he is, contenders start circling. And make no mistake, the 49ers are still viewed as contenders, even in a season that didn't meet expectations. This roster isn't far off. The core is here, the coaching staff is here. The championship window is still open, but it doesn't stay open forever. That's why rumors like this matter. Because sometimes aggressive moves are what separate almost from champion. Now before you get too carried away imagining Crosby wearing number 98 in Santa Clara, we've got to slow this down and break it apart piece by piece. The health, the contract, the trade cost, all of that matters. Because as exciting as this rumor is, building a roster isn't about emotion, it's about calculated risk. But if you love diving into these big-time 49ers rumors and breaking them down without the fluff, make sure you subscribe right now and turn on notifications. We're pushing toward 2,000 subscribers, and every single one of you helps us get there. And if this topic has you even a little bit fired up, hit that like button. It tells me you want more deep dive rumor breakdowns like this coming. Up next, we're going to get real about whether this is actually possible, what it would cost, what the cap hit looks like, and whether the 49ers should even consider pulling the trigger if the opportunity is there, because the dream scenario sounds great. The real-world version, that's where things get complicated. Alright, so let's get into the part that separates a fun rumor from a realistic football move. Because it's one thing to get excited about Maxx Crosby possibly wanting to be in the It's another thing entirely to actually pull off a trade like that without blowing up your roster construction. Let's start with the health situation, because that matters more than anything. Crosby is coming off meniscus surgery. Now, he's built his career on relentless effort, motor, technique, and strength. He's not just some twitchy speed rusher who wins purely with burst. That's good news in one sense, because his game should age better than a pure speed guy, but knee issues for edge. Rushers are never nothing when you rely on bend, leverage, and constant pursuit. Even a slight loss of explosion can change your effectiveness snap to snap. And here's the bigger concern. He's had knee issues over the last couple of years. This isn't just a one-time thing out of nowhere. When you're talking about trading premium assets for a player, you're not just evaluating who he was, you're betting on who he's going to be over the next 2 or 3 seasons. That's where the risk comes in. Now, let's talk money. Crosby carries one of the highest cap hits in the league next season. We're talking north of $35 million. That's top-tier quarterback level cap territory. When you absorb that kind of contract, you're not just adding a player. You're making a statement about your roster philosophy. You're saying we're all in right now, but going all in has consequences. It limits flexibility, it impacts future extensions. It affects how you build depth, so I want you to think about this carefully. If you had to give up to first-round picks and absorb a $35 million cap hit for a player coming off knee surgery, would you do it? Type T for trade or P for pass in the comments. Don't overthink it. Gut reaction, T or P, because here's the reality. The Raiders aren't just going to hand him over. Even if there's tension, even if he's frustrated, they know exactly what they have. Elite pass rushers are rare, they change games, they're cornerstones. If they move him, the asking price is going to be massive, probably at least to first-rounders. Maybe more depending on leverage, and when you start stacking that with the contract, you have to ask yourself something bigger. Is this team one player away? The 49ers absolutely need help in the pass rush. They finished near the bottom of the league in sacks. That can happen again. You saw how exposed the defense looked when pressure didn't arrive. In today's NFL, if you can't consistently collapse the pocket, even average, quarterbacks look elite. Now imagine a 3rd and 8 scenario. Nick Bosa on one edge, Max Crosby on the other. Offensive lines can't double both, protections get stressed. Quarterbacks speed up their internal clock. That's how you flip playoff games, that's how you close out drives. That's how you get back to playing January football. It's tempting, it's very tempting, but here's the other side of it. The 49ers have historically built through the draft when they've been at their best. It's because they hit on young talent and surrounded stars with depth. Trading away multiple premium picks reduces your margin for error. And this roster already has areas that need youth, speed, and cost-controlled players. If you swing big and it works, you look like a genius. If you swing big and the knee becomes a lingering issue or the cap squeeze forces tough cuts elsewhere, suddenly you've tied your future to one move. And that's why this decision wouldn't be simple. Personally, I love aggressive moves when you're in a championship window. Windows don't last forever, but I also understand the value of sustainability. This front office has to weigh short-term dominance versus long-term flexibility. So let me ask you one more thing before we move on. If the price dropped to 1 first-round pick instead of 2, does that change your answer? Or is the contract still too much for you? Drop your reasoning in the comments. I want to see thoughtful takes, not just emotional reactions. Because now we zoom out. Crosby might be the splashiest rumor right now, but he's not the only storyline shaping this offseason. There are major questions about the front office, key free agents, and other potential additions that could define how this roster looks when the season kicks off. And some of those might quietly impact the team just as much as a blockbuster trade would. Now let's zoom out, because as explosive as the Crosby rumor is, this offseason isn't defined by one name. There are multiple storylines that could quietly shape the direction of this team just as much as any blockbuster trade would. Let's start with the front office. There's been chatter about John Lynch and what his long-term role with this organization looks like. And before you overreact, take a breath. This isn't about a firing. This is about structure, evolution, and accountability. Lynch and Kyle Shanahan rebuilt this franchise from the ground up. People forget how messy things were before they arrived. Since then, multiple deep playoff runs, a Super Bowl appearance, another NFC Championship run, sustained relevance. That doesn't happen by accident, but here's where the pressure comes in. The draft misses over the last couple of cycles have hurt. When you build through the draft, you have to hit. And when you don't, depth erodes faster than you think. That's why this upcoming draft feels massive. If this regime nails it, the window stays wide open. If they don't, suddenly tough questions get louder. So here's something I want you to think about. Do you believe in this front office long-term? Type trust or doubt in the comments. I'm genuinely curious where you stand. Because roster construction decisions, like a Crosby trade, are directly tied to how much faith you have in leadership. Now let's talk about a player who might not get national headlines, but absolutely matters to this locker room, Jauan Jennings. You know exactly what he brings: toughness, clutch plays, blocking, physicality. He's become a fan favorite because he embodies that gritty, do the dirty work mentality. But here's the problem, other teams see that too. And in a wide receiver market that always inflates prices, Jennings could command serious money. If his number creeps into the high teens per year, the 49ers may have to make a hard decision. He's valuable, but this offense also needs more speed and explosiveness. Paying premium money to a possession-style receiver at this stage might not align with getting younger and faster. So I'll ask you this. If Jennings commands top dollar, do you pay him or let him walk? Comment pay or walk. There's no easy answer, because letting him go hurts emotionally, but cap space isn't emotional. It's math, and then there are the external options. A veteran pass rusher like Bradley Chubb could be a lower-risk way to boost the defensive front without mortgaging the future. Not as flashy as Crosby, but potentially far more affordable. That kind of move strengthens the rotation and gives you depth without blowing up the cap sheet. On the offensive side, you'll hear big names tossed around every offseason: speed, star power, splash signings, but you have to balance name recognition with health, fit, and long-term value. This team doesn't need headlines, it needs smart construction. And that's really what this whole offseason comes down to. Are you pushing all your chips in for one massive swing, or are you recalibrating, adding smart, complementary pieces, and trusting that internal development gets you back into the contender tire? Because make no mistake, this roster is not in rebuild mode. It's in retool mode. There's a difference. The core is here. The coaching staff is here. The expectations are still championship level. The question is how aggressive you want to be getting back there. So here's the final vote of the day. Which storyline matters most to you right now? Crosby, the front office future, or Jennings? Contract, drop C, L, or J in the comments. I want to see what this fan base is locked in on. And if you've made it this far, you clearly care about real, honest for Niners coverage without the noise. So help us grow this community. Subscribe right now and be part of the push to 2,000 subscribers. Every single subscription helps. Hit the like button if you want more rumor breakdowns like this, and share this video with that one friend who always thinks they know better about roster moves.